Hello and welcome to the Single Malt Frontier, where we explore the edge of innovation in American single malt whiskey. Here on the show, we do a little bit of tasting and a lot of talking. Usually, we talk about whiskey, but the best thing about whiskey is the conversations we get to have along the way, and we get to talking about a little bit of everything. I'm your host, Doug, or as I'm known around the internet, Demi Tastes. Uh, Phil is out today because he's not feeling well, but that's okay because we have plenty to talk about with Erin. So, our guest today is Erin Lee, head distiller of Few Spirits. Erin is also a graduate of the Step Up program and has been a member of the Step Up selection committee for the past year. She also assisted in blending Good Deeds Batch 2, which is a blend of bourbon and rye whiskey. And we will talk a little bit about that today. Few makes bourbon, rye, malt whiskey, and American single malt whiskey occasionally. And we have examples of all of those today. We'll see what we get to because there's a lot of ground to cover. So, Erin, before I go any further, would you mind introducing yourself and telling us a bit about what you do?
Hi, I'm Erin Lee, head distiller at Few Spirits, and all of the things you just said. I I grew up in Toronto, Canada, and I moved to New York City to become a fashion designer. I eventually kind of didn't want to be a part of the fashion world anymore, so I became a tea sommelier, and through that, I really discovered the joy of tasting, and then it kind of led me to explore whiskey, and I became a giant whiskey nerd, especially during COVID. I was like tuning into every podcast I could, reading magazines and books about whiskey. And the next thing I knew, I applied for a journey that I went and became the inaugural guinea pig in the Step Up internship program. And now I get to make whiskey every day, and it's been a fun and wild ride.
That is the real short version. I didn't know or I forgot about the fashion step of your career. I did know about the tea sommelier part, and that's definitely of interest here because we have at least one product that you formulated that includes some teas. So we'll get into that later. Um, I I feel like I relate to the pandemic thing, right? Like I was interested in whiskey and tasting
Mhm.
things, and then I became a whiskey collector, I guess, a reviewer during the pandemic, and I
We
listened to
all
every
become
podcast
collectors.
that there was. And now you're on podcasts, and I'm an interviewer on podcasts, and here we are in 2025.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's talk a bit more about the Step Up internship and the Good Deeds product. So I'm going to pour a bit of the Good Deeds Batch 2, which is a blend of bourbon and rye that Erin helped to blend. So could you just tell us a bit more about what the Step Up program is?
Yeah, the Step Up program helps provide training opportunities to underrepresented individuals. So, uh, people, I guess, who wouldn't normally have the opportunity to get their foot in the door in whiskey. Uh, I got the opportunity to actually travel around the country to different distilleries. I trained like in Portland and Pennsylvania and the Dallas Fort Worth area of Texas and Kentucky and Tennessee with like some pretty giant names in whiskey business. And it was really cool to just get to learn and be immersed in like just everything about whiskey making and even the distributing side for an entire year. And through this opportunity, it wasn't an internship that was designed where you go and you just build boxes in a corner or like print shipping labels. It was one that it was like, hey, like today you're going to spend time with the CEO. You're going to spend, I did spend some time on the bottling line because that's part of it too. But I also got to go to blending houses and spend time with whiskey blenders and distillers and I guess every aspect of it that you can imagine. That was my experience. And I like if there were areas of interest, I got to kind of focus in on that a little bit. And I quickly discovered like my big area of interest was production. So it was a lot of fun.
You know, it occurs to me, I don't really know what the typical way into the distilling industry is. I imagine it varies for some people, but I definitely have heard like, oh, I showed up in like offered to help fix the plumbing as like or like I started as a tour guide or something like that. But do you have like a sense of like what a normal way into the industry would be and how much the internship is different from that?
I think I pretty soon learned there is kind of no normal way. Like, and I like discovered as I was like tuning into podcasts during the pandemic, I was like, hey, there are people who are like former lawyers, there are former ballerinas, there's architects, like all sorts of people with really varied career backgrounds coming into the industry. And I think it's just if you want to make whiskey and you have a passion for it, it's just like see if they have a job at your local distillery. And like a lot of people find a way in that way because even if you start doing something unrelated to what you ultimately want to end up doing, if you work there and they like you, there's usually opportunities that arise. I think like what differed for me though is I had kind of a really vast experience because I was working at a distillery that was like super small scale as well as like super large scale and like mid size. So anywhere in between. So I got to see the spectrum of things and I was at 5 different distilleries total. So I think having that wide view of how things are done, and I was just like, oh, everyone's making whiskey, but the approaches to it were different. And as a result, that helped me kind of learn how to be more flexible and just problem solve differently than if I hadn't had that experience. And I also like I think one of the valuable things like when I started working full time in the distillery was just like, hey, like why do we do that way? Like and like sometimes there was a valid reason, but sometimes it was just like, oh, we've always done things that way. And it didn't have to be. And then I'd be like, oh, why don't we do things this way? And then sometimes it would be like, oh, we never thought of that. And it helped, I guess, change processes. But sometimes it was just like, well, we'll try it and see if it makes a difference or not. So
Yeah. So there's a lot of superstition around like the way we've always done things in the whiskey industry, right? Was I don't I think that's true in Scotch. I don't know how true that is in American whiskey, but did you ever get like pushback of like, "Oh, we don't wanna mess with that because we're pretty sure it matters?" Or were people more open to experimenting?
I think in American whiskey, we're a lot more open minded. Like, I guess there are certain people who can say, "Oh, my family's done it this way for whatever 3 generations." But I think, especially in the craft industry, we're all like new to this. We're all growing in this, so I think there's a lot of room to navigate. And I think people are so willing to like share information with each other and learn from each other. So I think that's really cool. Feels like a community.
How much of like a sway, I guess, or how much input did you have into where you would ultimately end up? Or was it like you finish the step up program and then you go like apply to join some distillery? What's that process like going from the program into the
The
first
real
entry
world.
level position?
Yeah, so I actually got the opportunity. Well, I think Paul let go. He was part of the selection committee for Step Up in the first year. He's the founder of Few, and he kind of knew me that way. And he was looking for a new distiller, and he reached out and was like, "Hey, Erin, we're hiring a distiller. Are you interested in applying when you graduate?" And at this point, I think it was October of my 1 year journey. And I was like, oh, I haven't finished my internship yet. I haven't gotten to experience all of the different aspects I want to do. And so I was like, I don't know. Because I have always had, and I still do have an interest in blending. And I hadn't spent time with a blending team at a larger distillery yet. So I just wanted to see what that was all about. But then I had like this like thought in the back of my mind, like I've worked with a lot of wonderful people, but also a lot of horrible people in the fashion industry. So I was like,
Mm.
I want to work with like only great people or else my soul will get crushed. So I had met a few people from the team at Few. So I'd met Paul before, I met Riley Henderson before. And then I was just like, well, that's like 2 out of, I don't know, 6 or 7 members of the team. So I was just like, I feel like these people seem cool. And then I also knew that Few had a woman on board at the time, Sydney Jones. So I didn't know her, but I like messaged her and asked if I could talk because I also had concerns that I am not a giant person and I've not been like super athletic in my life. I'm so I was like, oh, will like I be able to lift 50-pound bags of grain like consistently? Will I be able to, at the end of the shift, I guess, put in almost 4,000 pounds of grain into a mesh ton? Like, well, that was when we were doing doubles. And then like she told me that you kind of build up to it, and it was
Mhm.
true. At the beginning, I think I was just like, oh my gosh, like I can I can do it, but it was like really hard. So like I'd get like help from her or whoever else was on shift with me to like kind of grow how many I could throw in, I guess.
Yeah.
And eventually I ended up being able to like throw in like 90 bags of grain.
Yeah. I think we don't get to hear that angle of the industry very often, that working in a distillery, like we've established that it's an industrial space, right? It's
Yeah.
it's like you're producing an industrial chemical in a sense, right? The alcohol, but it's
Yeah.
also a very athletic thing to do. And I think that's often glossed over, that it is true that a lot of distillers are large in stature. They're either very tall or very muscular,
Hmm.
or something along those lines. And we don't talk very much about how physically demanding it is to be a distiller.
Yeah. I'm
So
5'3". So when I
yeah.
like entered the distillery space, I think I was like the shortest employee that had ever been there. So I quickly found out, hey, we need more step stools, like, and we need more. And they were definitely happy to accommodate me. And I think like when it came to like barrel movements, like each barrel empty is 100 pounds. And when it's full, it's 500 pounds. So it's just, I had to kind of discover different ways of working. Because if our barrels arrived in a stack of two, what is it? It's six, but it's like two barrels on top of each other. I was like, I can't like hulk that 100-pound barrel down like with brute strength. So
Yeah.
I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna have to work differently. And I found ways to like just maneuver them using like a forklift, and
Yeah.
it's anything's possible, but it's just you don't have to necessarily do things exactly the same as your coworkers.
Yeah. With the right tools, anything is possible, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Um, I mean, is there any additional safety concern, like due to being smaller or less strong? Or I imagine that the tools available make it like more of an endurance issue than a safety issue. But
Yeah, I think it's just take like sometimes just take things slow and then like think about the logistics of like how you're going to accomplish a task. Like once you start like getting into the flow, it's just like, oh, I've done this way, I'm going to do it this way like this time or whatever. And you kind of figure it out, but I feel like you have to not be afraid of asking for help. And sometimes it's just like, hey, like I need help to like pallet jack and turn around this what is it? I guess it's 2,000 pounds of spirit because it's 4 barrels on a pallet, like, and push it to turn it around in the truck because it's like kind of on a slope. If it's on a flat surface, I can like push that pallet around no problem. But on an angle, it's just like, I think I need an extra hand, just because like the additional body weight does help make it easier.
yeah, for sure. Okay, so before we go any further into your journey, let's talk about the first product on our list. So we've got the Good Deeds Bourbon and Rye, that you helped blend. And let me just make this a little bit more visible so you can see the label. I
Yay.
really love this label, and there's so much transparency on the back about the program and where the liquid came from. Uh, and the website has even more information than that. So this is, if you like transparency in your products, the Good Deeds products are good products for that. And all of the proceeds of the Good Deeds products go directly to the Step Up Foundation. to fund the internship. So we love talking about this brand and the Step Up Internship any chance we can get on this podcast. And we've had plenty of opportunity to do so because batch one of Good Deeds was a blend of 10 American single malt whiskeys, one of which was Few Spirits. So I know that the way I found Good Deeds was because of American single malt, because this blend of American single malts was such an intriguing concept. And that's also how I found Few, because Few is one of the brands that was listed on this bottle. But as I understand, you have an interesting story around this batch one of Good Deeds as well.
Oh yeah, I was, I guess, flipping through Instagram one day. I was just scrolling, and then I happened to see this bottle, and I read like the details, and it was a collaboration between 10 different distilleries. And at this point in time, it's like sometimes you'll hear about like one or two distilleries collaborating, and usually they're part of the same, I don't know, parent ownership or something. But I've never heard of like 10 distilleries collaborating. And it said they were raising funds for not for profit. And I was like, what is this not for profit? And I clicked the link and I discovered the Step Up internship. And I was reading the description and I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly the opportunity and like that I've been looking for. It's an internship program made for people just like me. Like, I need to apply. I thought I missed the deadline, but then I found out that it was extended because I was like, oh, let me like see what I need to do to apply next year. And then next thing I know, I get the phone call that I was chosen to be one of the first interns, and I was going to Kentucky to go to a spirits convention. So I think thanks to Good Deeds, like I'm a distiller now, or a distiller at Few.
Yeah, not just distiller, but head distiller. And I don't want to minimize at all. Like I want to put as much attention on this as I can. That you basically found out that you were interested in being in the whiskey industry in around 2020.
Yeah.
And you made your way through an internship program and into an entry level position in a distillery, all the way to head distiller in less than 5 years. That is incredibly impressive on a personal note, and also I think speaks volumes to how powerful a program the Step Up internship is.
For sure. I think it helped build a lot of confidence in me. And I also know that it's okay not to know all the answers, like, but I likely know people I can ask for things if ever I get stuck. Like, I've met a lot of wonderful people in the industry through the program. And even just, I guess, people within the industry were so excited that the Step Up internship program existed within the ACSA that they like introduced themselves to me, told me to come visit their distilleries, and I hadn't even started anything yet. So I feel like really lucky that I was embraced so warmly, and I've had like a lot of opportunities to grow and meet a lot of wonderful people and mentors along my way too.
Yeah, I met you at the ACSA 2024 in Denver,
Mhm.
and if I remember correctly, you had just graduated from Step Up. I think they even had the graduation ceremony at ACSA.
Yeah, that's correct. I
So, how closely tied is ACSA with the Step Up program, or is
uh,
it just a convenient like venue to have
it
the
it
graduation?
is closely tied because Margie Lehrman, well, like some of the staff members kind of intersect, but Margie Lehrman, who's I guess is she president of ACSA? She's also on the board of directors for Step Up internship, and a lot of the board members are have served on the board of ACSA in the past as well. So it's kind of interesting to see Chris Montana, who came up with the concept. I think he was a former ACSA president as well.
Hmm. Okay, so lots of common staff. Is
Mhm.
it part of the same organization
I
or an
guess
offshoot or just a separate kind of?
kind of it's separate but kind of together. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's fine. Um, as I guess it's like an awkward line of questions, actually.
That's
So,
okay.
um, so anyway, let's talk a little bit about specifically like what we're tasting in the Good Deeds Batch 2.
Mhm.
So unlike the tour de force 10 distilleries blended together in Good Deeds Batch 1, if I understand correctly, this is actually just 2 distilleries,
Yes, it's
and one it's a bourbon and a rye, right?
mhm. So we took rye from Whistled Pig and bourbon from Black Button, and we actually got to play with a couple of the. I guess they use 4 different component bourbons when they create their regular blend, and we chose 2 of the components to work with. One that was more in the spice category, and one that was more in the kind of sweet and rich cherry like category.
Hmm. How many casks or how many barrels sort of went into this?
So 3 different barrels went into the blend,
Okay.
and we produced 500 bottles total. There's, I guess, about 100 bottles left. So hoping that we move those so we can move on to our next blend, because I think it was like actually super cool for me to be involved as part of the team that created this. Was a very woman heavy blending team, which is amazing. We had Liz Rhodes from Whistle Pig, Cindy Belch from Black Button. We also had Sailor Guevara and Erica Paul involved. And Erica was actually the step up intern at Black Button at the time, and she's now a graduate as well.
Very cool. Oh,
And
so was blending as an intern.
yeah, she was blending as
That's
an intern.
that's very cool.
Yeah, so it was really cool because I guess you could kind of see like me being a graduate and her still being a part of the program. She was, I think, in our third class of the Step Up internship. So kind of been cool to like meet the other interns and kind of share a little bit of like my experience because I think you can't really understand what it's like to live out of your bags for months on end and like leave your home. Like it's a tremendous opportunity, but it's also like, hey, this is like stopping normal life for like months at a time.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a very demanding undertaking for your life.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was really lucky because of COVID, like this is so weird that I say it's lucky because of COVID, but like my husband got to work remotely, so he actually traveled with me.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. It was like sometimes awkward when we were in like a one room studio in Portland and he had like a I think 8 a.m. meeting on the East Coast, but it was like 5 a.m. in Portland and he was sitting on the dark and I was just like I had a pillow on top of my head. It's kind of funny. But
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's awkward. But
but
that's
he
really
made things
awesome that
work.
you were able to do that. Yeah, the
Yeah,
pandemic really changed everything.
for
I
sure.
mean, I ended up working permanently from home starting in the pandemic and never
Mhm.
went back to office, which is one reason I have the freedom to sort of do podcast interviews at any time of day that I want.
Well, that's awesome to have that flexibility. It's
Yeah.
really like I guess changed how people can work.
Yeah, absolutely. Although it on the flip side, you end up working till all hours of the night too because there's no distinction between home and work.
That's true.
So that's the downside of being a remote software engineer is that
Mhm.
you can be called on at any time of day. So I keep trying to bring it back to like what's in the glass on this whiskey.
Oh yeah.
So I got to try this a few times before today, and my takeaway of the flavor of this whiskey is that I mean it's a bourbon and rye blend, so I guess you could call that a rye. Not that I know anything about that because I'm an American single malt drinker mostly. Um, but interestingly, I think this is one of the most intensely herbal rye flavor profiles that I've ever had, even with the inclusion of the bourbon in there, or maybe something about the specific bourbon like amps that up somehow. Because, like you said, there's a sweetness here that,
Mhm.
considering how intensely herbal it is, it's also surprisingly sweet, which I think is the balance of the rye and the bourbon.
Yeah. This particular rye, I think it, like, brought a lot of, kind of honeyed and earthy qualities to it, and it was kind of quite herbal, and I think maybe the spice component kind of amps up some of that herbal.
Mm. Okay, so the bourbon's also bringing sort of spices in. That makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah, the like one of the bourbon components we use, I think they described it as spice being like more in like the cinnamon red hot kind of category,
Mhm.
which I feel like interesting to think about bourbon as being spicy, but if it's like I guess higher rye, it definitely can be.
So how easy was it to choose the barrels that went into this blend? Or how hard
We
was it?
I think it was we were lucky in that all of the liquid that we use is donated.
Mhm.
So like we had some choices for sure, but like with like Whistle Pig, they had chosen a barrel to donate for this that's a 6 year 100% rye. And with at Black Button, we just played with different variations of their bourbon to try and bring this to a place where we were all happy with it.
Mm.
And it was
Okay.
kind of like a speed round of blending too, because um, like with everyone traveling to Rochester to meet, like someone had like a travel delay, and then it was just like, okay, now we just have to do like tabletop blend. And I mean, I feel like because we had like a talented team of people, we got it done really surprisingly smoothly. So
Yeah, I would have loved it's too bad that, Phil's not here because I would have loved to get his take on this. He's a big rye drinker, so as much
mm,
as I drag him along to all the American single malt stuff, whenever we get a chance to talk about rye is when he really lights up because he loves everything rye, and I really do we'll find out soon, but I really do wanna know what he thinks
yeah,
of this blend because this feels to me like a rye drinker's product, but it's also it's quite a bit different from any other whiskey that I have, quite frankly. I would definitely recommend this if herbal sounds good to you.
yeah.
Um, yeah, this is definitely something to reach for.
I feel like there's a lot
So
of cinnamon for me, and definitely like kind of herbal tea.
yeah, I wonder if that maybe had something to do with the flavor profile that was sort of selected because you might be attracted to the herbal tea or the tea notes in this blend as a tea sommelier. I mean,
maybe maybe it's always in the background. I don't know. I do love a good cup of tea, so
yep. Okay, so speaking of, I think it's about time that we move on from the good deeds. Um, I want to talk about this Smashing Pumpkins collab that Few, this Few whiskey Smashing Pumpkins, the straight bourbon whiskey with Madame Zuzu's Midnight Rose Tea, which you developed this product. Is that correct?
yeah, that's correct. I feel super lucky. So I have a background as a tea sommelier. After I was starting to get nerdy about tea, my husband suggested I sign up for a program, and I was like, "What on earth am I going to do with that?" I am not sure I want to work in restaurants or whatever, but he was just like, "Hey, if you like learning about this, why don't you just see where it takes you?" So I did, and I um, feel like I just really fell in love with the whole process. And Billy Corgan and his wife are also mad about tea. So they actually own a tea shop in Highland Park, which is 30 minutes, 20 or 30 minutes north of the distillery. And because it was a tea product, they were like, hey, you have this tea background. You'll be able to talk about it like way more. Why don't you get these different teas and work with it? So Billy and Chloe picked out some teas from their tea shop, gave us some to work with. I created a bunch of different prototypes using both bourbon and rye to see what might work best. I immediately was super excited about this tea. It's like a Anhui Chinese black tea or that's been naturally scented with rose petals. And so I just was like, oh, this is going to be super exciting. And I tend to really like floral flavor profiles. So it was fun to use this. We used it in the proofing liquid, as well as we did do a little bit of an alcohol steep to kind of intensify some of those rose notes.
Mhm.
Like, and I think we hit a really nice balance where you still get, it's not like you're just tasting the tea, you still get a lot of like that caramel and vanilla, and but then you like the tea just becomes part of the background, and like the
Mhm.
mouthfeel, like, and the finish. Like I feel like the adds more viscosity to the mouthfeel, because if you think about like tea in your mouth compared to water, it
Mhm.
has a lot more going on, and I think it creates like a really long lasting finish that actually shines really nicely in a cocktail.
Yeah, that all of that, definitely. The long finish definitely stands out. The floral nose.
Mhm.
I love the idea of like, I think some people think of like, oh, like kind of like a flavored whiskey, right? Is
Yeah.
like you think of that as being like, okay, we started with whiskey and then we added some artificial flavor of some sort. Like we added cinnamon red hot's flavor and we made Fireball, or we added uh peanut butter. Where does Screwball even get their peanut butter flavor from? I've never even heard of artificial peanut flavor.
Might be actual peanuts, you never know.
I suppose it could be. I should check if there's an allergen warning on that. But um, the idea of using like real, like flavored products, the kind that you would consume separately from the whiskey, the kind of thing that you would potentially combine with a whiskey in a cocktail, and just
Mhm.
making that in the bottle, like you could think of this as being like a cocktail starter in a bottle in a way,
Yeah.
but it's also not sweetened because it's it's just rose flavored tea.
Yeah.
So I think that's a brilliant idea that produces a product that just feels so much superior to flavored whiskey that you would normally think of. Is
Uh,
this classed as a flavored whiskey with TTB?
it is not. It's a distilled specialty spirit, because
Ah,
it
okay.
doesn't quite fit into any other category.
Gotcha. Okay. So, all right. So not even technically. This
Yeah.
is just playing with
We also
the
start with like
algorithm.
good whiskey. Like we
Right.
our whiskeys like that's used in this and all of few products is at least 4 years old. So like it's not like we're trying to cover up like a young whiskey with something.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't think of a better way to like bring your tea expertise, which is I would guess probably a relatively rare thing in the whiskey industry. Maybe. Like I don't know for sure, but
I haven't met anyone else who's a tea sommelier, but I definitely have met a few tea nerds like Stephen Kaplan, who was on the few team, is now at Widow Jane. He was also a tea nerd, and that's kind of why Fuse like experimented with tea before with like the Eight Immortals rye. Um, and then I feel like Erin at Philadelphia Distilling, he's also a giant tea nerd. And I was just like, oh, we could have a little Samson and Surrey Tea Club or something.
hmm,
It's fun to see that. I guess like once you fall in love with like tasting and liquids, it's just another avenue to explore with your taste buds. And like even before I worked in the industry, I used to like to invite friends over to just have tea and whiskey pairings, and just kind of started redoing that recently. And it's a lot of fun because I think a lot of people, well, I think a lot of people in the US haven't had a good cup of tea. They're used to like, it's like, you go to like Starbucks or something, they have all of these like fancy machines and stuff. And then you get your cup of tea from them, and it's like a tea bag in a
mhm,
cup, and you don't know how long that tea's been in there. Like, and it's
mhm.
just like, okay. And then am I supposed to drink it with this in? I don't know. Like, so there's just not a lot of care that usually goes into preparing tea. So I feel like a lot of people have only had like an over steeped kind of bitter version of tea, which is why cream and sugar helps make it palatable.
Yeah. I personally wouldn't go to Starbucks for my tea fix, but I'm slightly a tea nerd. I've got a so my wife is from Fuzhou, China. They make a lot of tea there,
Mhm.
and her cousin taught me how to do the whole gongfu cha tea service with all the
Amazing.
extra cups and the um, like if you I guess for the audience, if you've gone on like the Whiskey Tribe, you've seen the West China Tea Shop featured there on their channel. Um, can't remember the guy's name actually.
Rohan?
Um, yeah, Sohan. So the whole thing that he talks about as like the way that you do the tea service, like I do that at home on like I would say probably once a month. I'd like to do it more often, but you
Mhm.
know, you need to have enough people over because it's like there's a production to it, right? There's a lot of stuff to clean and the I would say by total contrast, right? Something like Starbucks specializes in coffee. And
Yeah.
as a coffee nerd, I would say that they don't reach the level of being coffee nerds for the most part. And they don't think much about tea at all, right? Tea is technically on the menu,
Yeah.
but it's not where you want to go for good tea. Is sort of
Well,
what it
like,
comes down to.
it's just like if you try and think about where do you go for good tea, there's, like, no go-to place in the US that exists that's like, "Yeah, your tea is gonna be superior every time." Like, sometimes there'll be, like, a specialty local tea shop unique to, like, I don't know, your neighborhood, but that's kinda rare. Like, I feel like even in, like, a city like Chicago, I have to, like, search to find tea sources. So I buy a lot of
Yeah,
tea online.
it's like a tea like coffee is specialty coffee is pretty common these days.
Mhm.
And somehow specialty tea shops are like you practically have to go to Taiwan to find one, right?
That's true, and then everything's flavored with tea there. I feel
Right.
like I had, like, amazing, dairy-free tea ice creams, like and then I see, like, I don't know, isn't it like pi they've had, like, tea pineapple cakes and tea, like, I don't know, tea everything.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, so so a little context for listeners. By complete happenstance, Erin and I happened to both be in Taiwan around the same time in
Mhm.
November, I think it was.
Yeah.
We our paths never crossed, but I ended up getting some recommendations about where to go from Erin while I was there. So that was a lot of fun.
It was, definitely. I was happy to see, like, you checking out some of the places that I'd just been because I think I got to Taiwan, like, I think, like, a few days before you did, so I was, like, leaving Taipei as you were arriving.
Hmm. Yep, but I did get to check out the Wisteria tea shop, which was definitely the best the best tea experience I've had that wasn't at a relative's home, basically.
Mm, yeah. I feel like we were lucky to get in because 'cause they're gonna be closing for renovations soon, and you won't be able to go for, I think, like, 2 or 3 years soon?
Oh wow, that's a long time.
Yeah.
Wow, best of luck to them.
Right?
I'm sure their reputation is strong enough that they'll definitely come out of that just fine.
Yeah, I think, like, the building has been around for so long, I don't know, since, like, the 1800s, so, like, the floor was definitely really wavy in some places, so
Yep, yep. It was part of the charm for me.
Mhm. For sure.
Okay, so we've probably got time for one more whiskey-ish, or we could pass by the Chicago the Smokeworks on the way.
Mhm.
Um, so
Single malt?
let's see. Yeah, so let's just mention the Chicago Smokeworks as we go.
Yeah.
So Few has a malt whiskey, which is a blended mash bill of I don't know if it says,
It's
but Few
75% smoked cherry malt and 25% rye.
right there you go. So is it malted rye or is it
Just
just
regular
regular
rye.
rye? Okay. So 75% malt is a pretty high malt bill for a non-single malt product.
Mhm.
Um, so as far as like the subreddit is concerned, I say, you know, this is adjacent enough to the conversation that this feels worth reviewing in the context, especially of Few's relatively rare small batches of single malt.
Mhm.
Um, so I also love that it's cherrywood smoked. That's something that like American American malt whiskey likes to put smoke in products, but like unlike Scottish malt whiskey, where the smoke is all peat,
Yeah.
In American whiskey, you get a lot of hardwood smoke. So you get the mesquite,
Mhm.
cherry wood, apple wood, that sort of thing. Um, and when I say a lot, I mean like probably a half dozen distilleries total playing
Mm.
around with that idea. So it's really cool to have that option to compare from Few with things like Copper Fox, which I think you can see above me right there. Maybe if I zoom in.
Mhm.
So I'm looking forward to reviewing this, but in the interest of time, let's move on to the Few single malt.
Alright.
So interestingly, I think the first Few product I ever tried actually was a single malt, and it was at a cocktail expo in Seattle.
Oh, no way. When was this?
I think it was either 2021 or 2022. It was long enough ago, I don't remember exactly. But I was sort of referred, Joseph O'Sullivan, who I'd met at that point, was like, "You have to go to this expo. Like, you have to check out these products here. And while you're there, you have to talk to all the American single malt makers." And Few was one of the makers in the room, the
Mm,
American single malt room, I guess. There was like a whiskey room, and then there was a section of the room that was specifically like American single malt, which was really cool. Even back, I'm pretty sure it was 2022. Even back in 2022, there was enough to like occupy half of a room, which was really cool. And
oh, wow.
I was disappointed after that I've never been able to find a bottle of Few single malt.
Yeah, I think it's, like, one of those things that, um, like, Paul was really early to, like, the single malt world, at Few, and we put a lot down, at the beginning, but I think we quickly developed a reputation for our rye whiskey, and bourbons kind of I guess Americans just really like bourbon, so
Americans love their
kind of
bourbon.
it's kind of bourbons are become our, like, bread and butter, and single malt just never took off in popularity in, the same way. This one also actually incorporates smoked cherry malt.
I was gonna say it didn't initially seem like it on the nose, but on the palate, it's definitely there. And now I'm gonna pour some of the Smokeworks just so I have the
Yeah,
contrast to like remind myself how smoky the Smokeworks actually is.
mhm. Like, I feel like on the single malt, it's kind of more like a background of smoke where, like, in the smoke works, it kinda takes forefront where it's like, "I'm here, and I'm, like, happy to, like, take over the room."
Yeah. Yeah, that is a really interesting contrast. The rye really brings an interesting like foil to the smoky malty element by adding that backdrop of herbalness that really makes the malt and the smoke pop.
Yeah, I feel like it kind of amplifies some of the chocolatey notes of, like, the malt.
Yeah. The single malt is really delicate. How old is the single malt?
Single malt, I at this point, I'm not actually sure because it's been a while since we've bottled any. We still have some aging in barrel, and that's kind of coming to be about 10 years old, but I'm not sure at
Wow.
what point in time it was bottled because it was before I joined the team.
Okay. Oh, so this wasn't a fresh bottling of single malt that I got a sample of.
It's like I feel like it's been I don't know when it was last bottled because we did do, like, a Tokai finish single malt, like, bottling since I joined the team, but I don't remember bottling single malt since in the last couple of years, so
Okay. That's interesting because I feel like I just missed being able to buy this on the website. Like I went and looked one day and it was in stock,
yeah.
and then when we went to try to buy it, it was gone. So I
Oh,
thought it was like a recent release, and then it just right. That's why I had to ask you for the sample because
yeah.
I couldn't buy it. Very interesting. I'd love to try the Tokai finished. I mean, that's just like that feels like at this point almost a quintessentially American single malt thing. There's so many American single malts that are doing a Tokai finish. It's like
Mm.
we skipped the Sauterne phase almost and we just went straight to Tokai.
Yeah, I mean, it's a kind of really unusual dessert wine and like I feel like that intense sweetness. I don't know, kind of.
Yeah.
It's fun to play with.
Yep. It's fairly similar to Sauterne, right? It's the same Botrytis noble rot type of wine. It's just instead of
Mhm.
being from France, it's from Hungary,
Yeah,
right?
I believe so. I definitely am not a wine expert.
Fair enough. I'm not either. But to this day, I still have no real palate for wine. Everything I can taste in wine is because I like learned about it in whiskey first, and then I started being able to find it when I taste a wine.
You actually learn a lot because I sat on my first wine panel recently, and I was really intimidated to do it because I was like, oh, like with spirits, I know, like if you tell me this is supposed to be Tennessee whiskey or this is supposed to be bourbon or single malt, like from a certain region, like I kind of know what to expect. Even like with like rums and stuff, I was like, okay, I've had like a fair share of rum, but with wine, I think I almost never drink it. Not that I don't enjoy it, but I feel like once you like pop open a bottle, it's like, oh, you need like someone who'll drink that with you. And it's just like,
Right.
whereas whiskey, I'm like, oh, I can just pour myself a little anytime.
Yep, yep.
Make it a
Hundreds
little
of
or
open bottles behind me, and I'm not
yeah.
worried about it. But with wine, yeah, like I'm probably overly pedestrian with my wine because I'll be like, "Oh, it's been open less than 2 weeks. It's probably still fine." Right? Like
Mhm.
the people who like wine in the audience are fainting right now because of me saying that. Like, "Oh, I didn't finish it in like 2." I'm the only person in my house who drinks.
Mhm.
So my wife has never drank alcohol. So, if I open a bottle of wine, I'm committing to drinking that bottle of wine by myself
Exactly.
unless I
Like,
have guests. So there's limits to how much experience you can have with
mhm,
wine when that's the thing, especially if you're getting into good wine, you're going to be spending, $50 plus a
mhm.
bottle that you have to finish in a week. That's like that's a crazy proposition compared to like if I spend $50 on a bottle of bourbon, that's going to last me a good long time
For sure.
and I'm gonna get way more enjoyment personally. I'm gonna get way more enjoyment out of that bottle of bourbon or single malt than I will out of $50 of wine that I have to basically chug in a week.
Yeah. Like, so, like, I discovered when I did the wine panel, I was like, you can kind of carry over. I was like, well, the surprising thing was I was like, oh wait, you don't need to add water, like to like see how it changes or anything. You just and it's like so low proof that I feel like comparatively low proof that I'm like, oh, I could like taste a lot more of this without like my mouth going numb from like
Yeah,
whiskey, you know?
and you can really chew it too with wine, right? Like, you can
Mhm.
swish it, you can chew it, you can do
Yeah,
the sort of, like, sucking air through your teeth thing. Not
yeah,
quite gargling, but, like, it sounds a little bit like that. You can do all that with wine and look like I mean, you look like a total snob, right, if you try. But it's just like, I'm excited that I can taste wine like this because I can't do that with whiskey. It hurts, right? If you
mhm,
chew it really hard, you end up burning out your nostrils from the inside, right?
yeah. Especially if you're, like, reviewing a product that's, like, been in, like, new oak, like, I feel like the intensity of what the flavors, like, it's just like, "Okay, that's a lot for my little mouth right now," and it's like,
Yep.
I feel like I just like to, like, enjoy my whiskey, like, real slow, and, like, I like to sample, but I definitely, like, stick to, like, little baby quantities, like, in my off time. Like, I love, the wee Glencairn, and I
Mhm.
feel like it's just like, "Oh, 3 or 4 wee Glencairns, like, that's perfect for me for, like, an evening, like, tasting on my own." But, like, to, like, I guess, review, like, I don't know, 20 of those, like, at a time, that would, like, definitely start making your mouth numb.
Yep. Okay, so I just thought there's a question I've never known who to ask. So I think you might be the right person to ask this question. I have this theory about tannic whiskey, and especially tannic high proof whiskey,
Mhm.
that something about the interaction of alcohol and tannins makes a whiskey burn more. So this is sort of my explanation for why certain bourbons, especially really oaky bourbons, that
Mm.
are not necessarily as high proof as like I could drink a scotch that's like 63% and
Mhm.
it doesn't feel like it burns. So it's just like you have to be at that point you have to be careful to know how much you're drinking because you don't feel it. But if you put an equivalent percentage bourbon in a glass that's like a 6, 7 year old bourbon, as opposed to like a 15, 18-year-old scotch at that same proof level, it
Mhm.
just doesn't so the whiskey sorry, the bourbon burns way more than the
Mm.
scotch does.
Yeah, I think
My
it's that.
theory for that is tannins and
Mhm.
alcohol interact and cause more of a burn. What do you think?
I think it's like that intensity of the new oak extraction. So I think I was actually talking with someone and they were telling me about how bourbon, because of the char from the new barrels, they all have like a ppm to them. So they're like,
Like a guayacol, like smoky?
yeah. And I
Yeah.
was just like, I didn't realize that. And he was saying that I think it was Glenmorangie, they always use first fill or second fill, and they consistently have, like, something like 7 ppm, so, like, he was like, "Oh, the ppm on, like, bourbon, which is, like, new, like, would be so much higher," and then I was just like,
Hmm.
"I thought about that." But I think, like, there are just so many more compounds, like, coming on. I think I just listened to a actual talk about, how much oak extractives you get on a new barrel, and I feel like if you get, like, 100% on a new barrel, I think on a used barrel, it's like 16 or something like that
Hmm.
first fill, and I was just like, "That's kind of like a massive difference." So I think it could be the tannins, definitely, like, because I think, like, anytime you get, like, a lot, it kind of, like, just dries all the moisture out of your mouth, right?
Right, right. It's sort of like tannins, like, I think one way I heard it was tannins kind of, like, cut through the saliva, like,
Mm.
the sort of, like, oiliness of saliva. I don't know what it is, and it's just, like, it lets the liquid, like, attack your palate more, and that's the reason that over-extracted tea and heavily oaky bourbons give you that drying sensation, because
Mm.
it's actually literally, like, taking the saliva, like, out of your mouth,
That's
basically,
wild.
right?
Well, I
And
guess,
so
like, yeah, the saliva helps, like, lubricate and kind of, like it would kind of mellow out things because it would dilute. So I guess if it was displaced.
yeah. And then the alcohol has the chance to just completely attack your tongue and your palate in a
Mhm.
way that it wouldn't otherwise. So
Yeah.
I guess I was just wondering if, like, if you had some context from, like, the tea world of, like, overly extracted tannic teas that sort of, like, lends any data to that assumption?
I don't I don't know if I have actual data on that, but I do know that, like, what tea is kind of like one of those things that's dangerous because, like, if you I guess it's like whiskey, like, if you over extract, you can't go back.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's like you can't remove tannins. You could try and blend them out, but
Right.
you can't
Yeah,
go
yeah,
back
yeah.
to before it became that way.
Yeah, so I was speaking recently with Mark Viertaler from Whiskey Del Bach about this may actually have been recorded on a podcast on a I was a guest on somebody else's podcast where the concept of like an over extracted barrel came out. Like,
Mhm,
if you've extracted too much barrel, like too much of, like, I don't know, let's say it was a sherry barrel and you got like too much sherry out of it, or let's say the barrel
mhm,
got too old and you have too much oakiness, right? Like, is there a point where that barrel somehow, like, something changes and the flavor is just bad, that like there's no way you could blend it out? It just becomes bad, something that you just can't use? Or can anything be saved?
mm.
And Mark's thinking on this was that anything can be blended because it's not like you're getting different or worse chemicals. It's just that those flavors have become too strong, and you can always put that component into a blend and sort of like dilute it out. Is that true for tea as well? Like, I don't know if anybody ever really tries this, where like your tea's over extracted, and then you're like, oh, don't worry, we'll just get new tea leaves and we'll just mix it together, and now we can drink it.
Like, I feel like for me, like, you can't fix it. Like, I mean, obviously, sometimes when I make tea, I have definitely walked away for a second and then spaced out and been like, "Oh my gosh, there's still water in my teapot." And sometimes I will try and, like, save it by, like, making, like, a quick steep and then, like, diluting it, but it's never as good as if you got it right in the first place. Like,
Right.
I think with whiskey, there's just I don't know. I definitely do think most things can be blended out. Like there is like a threshold for certain things that it's like if you're not supposed to taste it, like the threshold's real low, like 1%.
Mhm,
But I do
mhm.
think I do think that usually with alcohol you can find a way, even if it's to redistill it and give it a different life.
I think tea is a little different too because, at least when you've got, like, the raw tea leaves and you're doing the short steeps and you'll go through, like, 10 or 12 steeps of a
Mhm.
single, like, let's say, half ounce of tea in a sitting. When you get to the end of that session, the tea tastes different than it did at the beginning because you
Oh
don't
yeah.
have any of the initial extractives, they already came out. So
Mhm.
you're left with the sort of not as good tasting stuff. And so, like, if you started with fresh tea leaves and you blended the good first steep together with the bad last steep, like, that you're missing the middle, right? There's no balance because it's not this progression from the
Mhm.
fresh tea to the old tea. It's just this juxtaposition of the worst steep versus the first steep. And the first steep's not necessarily the best, but it's one of the better ones,
Yeah.
right? So, like, you're missing the middle. There's it's a different kind of thing compared to whiskey, right?
Mhm. Yeah, because I think part of the fun of Gong Fu style is just seeing how it changes and transforms across the course of all the steeps. And I think you're right. The first or second steep is usually like the desired steeps. And then, like, I feel like after 4 or 5, well, depending on what you're making, if it's like puer, I feel like it could go on for days. Well,
Yeah,
maybe.
you could use puer for a while. Yeah, I mean, I'm no expert about tea, right? Look at me trying to talk to a tea expert about tea. Like, I know what I'm talking
Oh, I mean, I just feel like I'm a nerd about things, so I'm excited to talk with you about. Yeah.
All right, so to sort of to bring it back to this few single malt that we're tasting here.
Mhm.
So the next time they release a single malt on the market, you heard it here first, maybe? Question mark. They've got 10-year-old single malt that might be coming soon, so keep your eyes peeled. I certainly will be. That looks like that's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, I don't know how old this one is, but it is very promising, and the smokehouse, the Chicago Smokeworks, sorry, not Smokehouse, Smokeworks, is just an utterly delicious whiskey, right? It's not American single malt, but it's 75% malt. It's good enough for me to recommend, uh, based on mash bill. So I would say don't sleep on that one either. A pretty good price. I don't remember what I paid for it, but I think it was around $55.
Mhm.
So, and that's in Washington. Our prices are always super inflated here. So,
Yeah, in Illinois,
um,
I think you get a bargain. Oh, like, I think
yeah. How is it in Illinois?
I think it's about $40 in Illinois, so,
Nice. Yeah.
yeah.
I would buy this all day long at $40. That's a great. It'll only last me for 3 years. The rate that I go through things.
Hey, that's the fun of exploring. And then you can compare and contrast to other things in your collection. Like,
Yeah.
do you ever make curated tastings for yourself where you're just like, "I'm gonna try everything that's similar in this way?"
Yeah, you know what's funny? Sometimes so, like, if I'm going through, like, a, "Hey, this month feels like it should be a drier month," I'll use a spit cup, and while I'm doing that, like, having a whole, like, serving of alcohol in the glass doesn't make a lot of sense because you're gonna, like, taste it and then spit it out and then go like, "Okay, I've still got so much whiskey in my glass. What am I gonna do?"
Mhm.
So, during those times, I'll tend to actually pour, like, as little as I could possibly pour into my glass and then, like, have, like, 8 different things in a night
Mm,
and just, like, have a few sips of, like,
yeah.
and with that many different things to compare, I can always go like, "Okay, let's compare number 1 to number 2, number 1 to number 3," and just, like, go through all the combinations, and whiskey speaks to you so differently depending on the contrast.
Yeah.
I don't do food pairings with whiskey that often actually because something about, like, when I'm eating, whiskey becomes, like, more unpleasant somehow, like,
Mm.
it burns more, I don't get as much nuance of flavor, or something like if I'm combining, like, a Lagavulin with a steak, which is, like, a classic pairing,
Mhm.
I feel like they're just competing with each other, right? Like, if I have a really good steak, I wanna focus on that. If I have a really good whiskey, I wanna focus on that. So, it's almost like whiskey pairs well with itself. being able to try different, and I know that not everybody can do that, right? Like most people don't have the y'all, this is irresponsible. Okay. Let's be plain here. The reason I have so many whiskeys is because I decided to be a whiskey reviewer and podcaster. You shouldn't do this, right? Like get a few whiskeys, finish them. But when you do have the luxury of having like this is like, don't be the person who owns the yacht. Be friends with the person who owns the yacht, right? If you make yourself a friend who has a whiskey collection, don't be the person who has the whiskey collection and ask them to do pairings for you. That's the way to go. So I like having friends over
Mhm.
and giving them a few sips of something and being like, okay, what did you think about that? Okay,
Yeah.
you liked this aspect of it. I'm gonna go find you something else that's like that, and then we're gonna like try that, and then go from there. I love doing that.
Ah, you're a journey curator.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done a whole lot of advertising for this yet, but I do private tastings. So I try to bring that experience
Yeah.
to private parties. It's a little bit harder because I have to like do the research about what makes a good flight ahead of time. But because
Mhm.
I'm not brand affiliated, I have the freedom to bring any whiskey I want, right?
Yeah.
So I'll be like, okay, we're gonna start with one of the tastings I did recently. We're gonna start with Buffalo Trace, and we're gonna work our way towards Lost Lantern Mountain Meadow.
Mm.
It's just a wildly different flavor
That
profile,
one is
but
so funky.
there's a lot of steps along the way that make sense,
Yeah.
and building that tasting in a way that everybody enjoyed every step of the way was a fun challenge.
I'm curious what that progression looked like just because 'cause I'm, like, picturing them in my head, and I'm like, "Well,
I
you'll have
wonder
to
if I
send
could
me this later."
I wonder if I could find the list, probably not in the next, like, 2 minutes, but it was, like it was unintuitive, and ultimately, I also brought my barrel pick of McCarthy's, and
Mm.
that was really the pinnacle of the evening. It was like, we're aiming at McCarthy's, and I want to set this up so that everybody enjoys every step of the way and learns something. And then when we get to the McCarthy's, it's like mind blowing. This is what this has all been leading up to. You taught us about single barrels, you taught us about peated whiskey, you taught us about single malt, and now we can see it all in one product and it tastes
Mhm.
good.
Mhm.
And then the Mountain Meadow was actually just like a bonus pour. And I just needed to make sure that that made sense in the
Yeah.
context. So people ended up buying both the McCarthy's and the Mountain Meadow as a result of that tasting, which was fun,
Oh,
right?
wow.
Like it's always nice when you could be like, I people liked it enough that they went off and bought it.
Yeah.
So yeah. Sorry, enough
Awesome.
about me.
Oh, no, no, it's, like, fun to, like, be able to, like, make believers out of people with, like,
Yeah,
talking about.
that's what this is all about, right? Like why am I doing this podcast? It's so that I can help people discover the things that I love, really.
Mhm.
It's definitely a selfish thing in that respect.
Hey, I think I don't know, sometimes people need a spirit guide, a literal spirit guide, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, I do wish that like we had a little bit more time so that we could taste a couple of these other things like the Immortal Rye, but I think we'll just probably leave that for the next time and quit while we're ahead. So we're working on making these interviews shorter. So, Erin Lee, thank you very much for your time. It's been great speaking to you at length, which I don't think we've really had a chance to do yet in our brief meetings. And also to sort of get you on the record talking about Step Up and Good Deeds and your journey through Few and the distilling industry. It's been great to learn from you, and I can't wait to learn more from you about tea and everything else as we continue chatting offline. But for now, I think I'll say let's do what we usually do. We have sort of two ways of wrapping this up. One is we blend everything together,
Alright.
and then we just see how that tastes. So I don't know if you have all the same things that I have, but
I probably do,
so
but
the
I
other the other would be to just choose a favorite. And since these are all your products, I think it's probably not fair to make you choose a favorite. So the blending sounds like probably the more fun thing to do.
alright, here we go. Think
This is gonna be a mess of a blend here because we've got bourbon and rye and tea and single malt
and
and sherrywood smoked malt. This is silly. I love it.
I've never done this before, so this is something new.
I always wonder if this is like more sacrilegious to people who have put the care into blending a product
I
and
mean,
then
I
be
think
like,
once it's in your home, have fun with it. Like,
right,
and how do you learn about more about blending unless you do it?
yeah,
And you can
actually.
it helps you appreciate like what care goes into it.
So I've got a little 2-liter barrel that I age stuff in,
Oh, really?
and usually I haven't actually done anything with it in a while. I think it's like it's on its like eighth or ninth fill, and it's got rum in it that's been sitting for a year and a half.
Mm,
And I think at this point it's pretty much just sludge on the bottom. So like I'm probably not going to recover much liquid from it, but I am gonna be able to season whatever I put in next with the rum.
yeah.
Before I put anything in the barrel, what I do is like a little blend of like what came out of the barrel and what I'm planning on putting into the barrel.
Mm,
Because it's not gonna be the same thing. You're missing like what the barrel's gonna bring, but when the barrel gets to being this inert,
yeah.
right? Being 9 like I've been using it for 4 years, it's been filled up 9 times, right? Like it's the barrel, its only job is don't leak.
Yeah.
Like, right? So it's not really bringing that much to the story anymore. So I have to make sure that like it's not gonna be a totally weird thing. I had a bottle of Baijiu that I wanted to like do something with, and a friend was like, "Don't try to age your Baijiu. It's not gonna get better. It's just gonna ruin your barrel." And I was like, "That makes sense." And I tried the little blend anyway, just to like
Mhm.
see like, will what just came out of the barrel and the Baijiu go well together? And
Yeah.
no, it doesn't. Every time I've tried to do something with Baijiu, it just doesn't work. I tried making a cocktail out of it. It's just like if you can tolerate Baijiu neat, great, but it doesn't work with anything.
Well, Baijiu can be pretty aggressive, so and funky.
So I'm predicting I'm gonna get a lot of herbal and rose tea notes out of this. Yep. Actually, what's actually really interesting about that is I've lost the cherry smoke entirely
Oh, really?
on
I
on
must
the
have
nose.
different proportions, so I feel like my
Definitely. That's
cherry
one problem with this is that nobody's drinking the same thing actually. Yeah, the cherry wood smoke is completely gone. That's so weird.
That is wild. Yeah, for me, I'm getting, like, definitely more cherry wood smoke but I think proportionally, I had, like, less in my cup for
I thought I had a fair amount of the smokeworks, but somehow that didn't. I don't know. It's always funny, right?
Mhm.
What Nora told me last time we had Lost Lantern on was that um, I think it was the last thing you add to the blend somehow dominates the flavor profile.
Oh, yeah. I've heard that from people, like, that for some reason, even if you I guess it's like baking a cake, what order you put the ingredients in matters. Like, you all end up with the same thing, but I don't know, I guess it'd be like putting your frosting into the batter instead of like
Yeah. Well, that's weird.
well, if you think about it, it's like
It's cake balls.
all the same ingredients, but it's like how they're assembled makes a difference.
Yeah. It's like doing the butter and the egg and the sugar.
Yeah.
I'm not much of a baker, I apologize. Like there's
Um,
like a correct thing to do with like the sugar and the wet ingredients
yeah,
that you have to do separate from the dry ingredients, or it's like different. It is if you add the butter to the flour, then you end up getting like this flaky texture, which is a totally different
yeah,
product, right? A valid thing to bake, but like if you're doing the wrong thing, you're not going to get what you intended.
for sure.
So yeah, but it is surprising. I mean, it makes sense. You throw a bunch of things in a glass, and it's just going to be weird until it settles down.
Oh, yeah. Like, well, I guess
But
it's like microchemical reactions happening, and that's why, like, a lot of people when they do blend, it's like, oh, I'm gonna let that sit for I don't know, 20 minutes or so to like calm down.
yeah, so okay, what's interesting, I think it's like between the rose and like the cinnamon
Mhm.
cherry wood smoke, maybe like there's a cherry component in here, even though I'm not getting smoke anymore.
Yeah.
This has developed a bubblegum nose for me.
Oh, well, bubblegum is good. I feel like
Yeah.
I often get it in like a lot of spirits, but it's a sign of good fermentation. So
Hmm. I don't. How would you break down bubblegum? Like, what's the flavor profile that makes up bubblegum? Because for me, it's just a childhood memory. That's bubblegum. That's what that tastes like.
yeah, it's like so specific because I feel like it's like kind of feels like an unidentified like fruit in a
Mhm.
way. Like it's just like that's just bubblegum and that's just what it is. Like
Yeah.
sometimes like I'm tasting things and I'm like, oh, it's like hubba bubba.
Mhm.
Like and
Or
that's like
Double
so
Bubble
specific. Yeah.
or, Big League Chew.
Oh yeah, that's very specific too.
Yep. Alright, that was fun. This is probably one of the more unpredictable ones that we've done as a blend because these products vary so much.
Oh yeah. It's like, what category of whiskey are we not including?
Right. Yeah. And now it's just it's a distilled specialty spirit too because of the tea inclusion.
Exactly.
So there you have it. We're ending this interview on a distilled specialty spirit of our own creation because why not? So once again, Erin, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for playing ball with me on this bubblegum adventure that we've crafted here.
Well, thanks for having me on. This has been fun.
And everybody else, by the way, you can buy these Glencairns. This is the single malt Frontier and the Whiskey Lodge sticker that we put on the McCarthy's bottle. And there's still about a case or two left of the McCarthy's bottles, last I heard. So that's still available too. And as Erin said, last but definitely not least, there are about 100 bottles left of this bourbon and rye blend that Erin helped craft. So make sure to get these before they're gone. You're supporting a great cause that brings awesome people like Erin into the industry, all the way to head distiller. Just an awesome program, and we can't talk about them enough. So we're glad to have Erin on representing the Step Up Foundation as a graduate and a selection committee member. Um, so yeah, there's so many. Erin represents so many good things that you have to go try or that you should know about. So cheers to all of that
Oh,
and
cheers.
this funky little blend that we created. And until next time, we'll see you in the lodge. Cheers.